The cowboy thought his horse was lost. Then it returned with an Apache woman at dawn. The cowboy had lived on that stretch of land for most of his adult life. The desert was not kind, but it was honest. It gave back only what a man was willing to earn with patience and hard work. Every morning before the sun rose, he stepped outside his small wooden cabin, breathed in the cool air, and listened to the quiet. That quiet had always been shared with one steady sound, the soft movement of his horse in the nearby corral. That horse was not just a tool for work. It was his companion. They had crossed dry riverbeds together, worked long days moving cattle, and stood through storms when the sky turned dark without warning. The cowboy trusted the horse more than most people. It knew his voice, his moods, and even his silences. When the cowboy was tired, the horse slowed. When danger felt close, the horse sensed it before he did. On the evening everything changed. The sky had looked uneasy. The wind picked up early, pushing dust across the land. The cowboy had planned to bring the horse back before nightfall, but one fence line needed fixing. He told himself it would only take a few more minutes. By the time he finished, the light had faded and the wind had grown sharp. As he led the horse toward home, a loud crack echoed in the distance, thunder, sudden and close. The horse startled, pulling hard. The cowboy tightened his grip, speaking calmly, but another loud sound followed. The ground felt alive beneath their feet. In that moment, the horse broke free. The cowboy called out, his voice strong against the wind. He ran after the dark shape moving fast across the open land. The dust made it hard to see. The thunder rolled again, and then the horse was gone, swallowed by night and storm. He stood there longer than he should have, hoping to hear hooves return. They didn't. That night he barely slept. The storm passed, but worry stayed. Before dawn, he was already riding his old spare horse, searching the paths they both knew well. He followed tracks where he could, bending low, reading the ground the way years of ranch life had taught him. But the land was dry and unforgiving. Wind erased signs quickly. By midday, the tracks disappeared completely. He rode farther than usual, calling the horse's name again and again. Each time the sound faded into silence. By evening, exhaustion settled in, heavy and deep. He returned home with an empty lead rope and a feeling he didn't want to name. The next few days were harder than he expected. The corral stood quiet. Feeding time felt wrong. He kept turning his head, expecting to see the familiar shape approach. Neighbors stopped by, offering help and sympathy. Some said the horse might have run too far. Others gently suggested it might not come back at all. The cowboy nodded, thanked them, but inside he refused to accept it. He knew that horse. It had survived worse. Still, each sunrise without it made the truth heavier. He searched every day. Morning rides stretched into long afternoons. He followed dry creek beds, old trails, and places where animals often gathered. At night, he sat outside his cabin, staring at the stars, replaying the moment he lost control of the rope. He blamed himself. If he had finished earlier, if he had listened to the sky. On the fourth night, he finally let the thought enter his mind. The horse might be gone for good. The desert has a way of teaching lessons without words. Some losses are quiet. They don't come with clear endings. The cowboy felt smaller under the wide sky than he ever had before. Without the horse, the land felt different, less familiar. Before dawn on the fifth day, something changed. He woke to a sound that didn't belong in his dreams. At first he thought it was the wind brushing against the cabin. Then he heard it again, slow, steady hooves. His heart began to race. He pushed the door open, stepping into the cool morning air. There, standing just beyond the fence, was his horse. For a moment he couldn't move. Relief rushed through him so strongly it nearly knocked him back. The horse looked tired but calm, its head lowered as if it had always meant to return. Then he noticed something else. Someone was sitting on the horse's back. A woman. She sat bareback, holding herself carefully as if every movement required effort. Her long dark hair fell loose over her shoulders. Her clothing was worn and dusty, marked by long travel. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were alert, steady, and watching him closely. The cowboy stopped where he stood, hands open, showing no threat. He felt confusion mixed with caution. This was not how he expected to find his horse. The horse shifted slightly but did not move away. It stood quietly, as if waiting. The woman slowly slid down, landing on her feet with care. For a second she swayed, then steadied herself by resting a hand on the horse's side. The horse did not pull away. Instead, it leaned slightly toward her. The cowboy noticed small signs, scratches on the horse's legs, dust caked into its coat. It had traveled far, and it had not been alone. The woman spoke first. Her voice was soft but clear. She thanked him for the water he had not yet offered, as if she already trusted he would. That surprised him. He nodded and gestured toward the cabin. Words felt less important than action. He fetched water, offering it carefully. She drank slowly, respectfully. The horse drank next. Only then did the cowboy fully understand that the horse had not simply wandered back. It had brought someone with it, on purpose. As the light of dawn spread across the land, the cowboy felt a quiet shift inside himself. What he thought was a loss had returned as something far more unexpected. He didn't know who the woman was yet or where she came from, but he knew one thing for certain. The story of his missing horse was only beginning. The sun was fully rising now, spreading soft light across the land. The cowboy stood near the fence, still trying to understand what had just happened. His horse was back, safe and calm, but the presence of the woman changed everything. This was no longer a simple story of loss and return. It felt like the land itself had brought someone to his door. He moved slowly, careful not to scare her. He pointed toward a small bench near the cabin and then toward the shade. She understood and walked there, her steps steady but tired. He could see now that she had been traveling for days. Her face showed strength, but also deep exhaustion. The horse followed closely behind her, staying near as if it was watching over her. The cowboy brought out a clean cloth and more water. He placed them nearby and stepped back, giving her space. She noticed this and gave a small nod, a quiet sign of respect. When she sat, she closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, as if allowing herself to finally rest. After some time, she spoke again. She said her name calmly. She explained that she was Apache and had been separated from her people while traveling through rough land. She did not share every detail, only what was needed. Her voice was steady, but there was weight behind her words. She had walked long distances alone, relying on the land, the stars, and her instincts to survive. The cowboy listened without interrupting. He had learned long ago that listening mattered more than speaking. He could tell she was careful with her words, choosing them with purpose. When she mentioned the horse, her eyes briefly softened. She said she found it during the night, standing quietly near a dry wash. It did not run from her. Instead, it stayed. She explained that she had no strength left at that point. She rested beside the horse, and when morning came, it allowed her to climb onto its back. She did not guide it. She trusted it, and it brought her here. The cowboy felt a deep sense of wonder hearing this. He had always believed animals knew more than people gave them credit for. Still, this felt different. The horse had not only survived the storm and days alone, it had chosen to help someone else and then return home. He finally spoke, telling her the horse's name and how long they had worked together. He shared how he had searched for days, thinking the horse might never come back. His voice stayed calm, but inside, emotion stirred. Losing the horse had felt like losing part of himself. The woman listened with the same respect he had shown her. She said the horse trusted him deeply. She believed that trust was why it brought her here, not to any place but to this place, to him. As the morning passed, the heat slowly began to rise. The cowboy offered her food, simple and warm. She accepted with gratitude, eating slowly. He noticed how carefully she moved, conserving energy. He also noticed small marks on her hands and arms, signs of long travel through harsh land. While she rested, he checked the horse. He brushed dust from its coat and cleaned small cuts. The horse stood patiently as it always had. But now the cowboy could see something new in its eyes, a quiet pride, as if it had completed an important task. Later, the woman asked about the land around them. She wanted to know which paths led where and which areas were safer. The cowboy explained, pointing out distant hills and dry riverbeds. He realized then that she was thinking ahead. She was not only resting, she was planning her next move. She shared that people might be looking for her, and not all of them meant well. She did not sound afraid, only aware. The cowboy understood the risk without needing more explanation. The land had taught him that not every threat announced itself loudly. This knowledge placed a weight on his shoulders. He had lived quietly, staying out of trouble, focused on his work. Now, trouble stood gently in the shade of his cabin, asking for nothing but time and understanding. He made a decision without saying it aloud. He told her she could rest there as long as she needed. The land was wide and no one came by often. His voice carried honesty, not obligation. She studied him carefully before responding. Then she thanked him, not with excitement but with deep sincerity. She said kindness was remembered longer than fear. As the afternoon moved on, they spoke more, though still not too much. They talked about weather, about animals, about the way the desert changed with the seasons. They did not rush into trust, but it grew quietly between them. When evening came, the sky turned gold and then deep orange. The woman stood near the horse, resting her hand on its neck. She said she would leave at first light. The cowboy nodded, though something inside him tightened at the thought. That night, as the stars appeared, the cowboy lay awake longer than usual. His horse was back, yet his life no longer felt the same. The desert outside his cabin seemed alive with meaning. He knew that whatever happened next, this meeting had already changed the path ahead. As the fire burned low and the land settled into silence, the cowboy realized that the horse had not just returned home. It had brought a turning point with it. Morning arrived slowly, as it often did in the desert. The sky changed color little by little, from deep blue to soft pink. The air was cool, and the land felt calm, as if holding its breath. The cowboy woke early out of habit, but also because his thoughts had kept him restless through the night. He stepped outside and saw the woman already awake, sitting quietly near the fire's ashes. The horse stood nearby, grazing slowly. For a moment, none of them spoke. The silence felt natural, not heavy. The cowboy poured water into a cup and offered it. She accepted with a small nod. The way she moved was careful but stronger than the day before. Rest had helped, but her journey was still written on her face. She told him she would not leave just yet. Not today. She explained that her body needed one more day to recover before traveling again. The cowboy agreed without hesitation. He told her there was no rush. The land would still be there tomorrow. As the sun rose higher, he went about his usual morning tasks. Feeding the animals, checking supplies, walking the fence line. He noticed the woman watching quietly, learning the rhythm of the place. After some time, she joined him, offering help. He hesitated at first, then allowed it. She worked with focus, not wasting movement or energy. He could see she understood hard work and survival. While they worked, they began to share more of themselves, slowly and carefully. She spoke about her people, about the land she came from, and how every trail had a story. She explained how elders taught them to read the wind, the soil, and the stars. Her words were simple, but they carried deep meaning. The cowboy listened closely. He shared his own life, growing up learning ranch work from older hands, learning through mistakes and long days. He spoke about the loneliness that sometimes came with wide open spaces. He admitted he had chosen this life because it was quiet and honest, even when it was hard. They found common ground in the land itself. Both understood that survival came from respect, not control. Animals were not owned, only guided. The desert was not empty, only misunderstood. Later in the day, the woman asked if she could spend some time alone with the horse. The cowboy agreed. He watched from a distance as she brushed its coat using gentle hands. She spoke softly to it, not in commands but in calm tones. The horse responded with trust, lowering its head, relaxed and steady. Seeing this stirred something in the cowboy. He had always known his horse was special, but now he saw it through another's eyes. The horse was a bridge, connecting two lives that might never have crossed otherwise. As afternoon heat settled in, they rested in the shade. The woman grew quiet, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. After some time, she spoke again, her voice lower. She explained that her separation from her people was not accidental. There had been tension, misunderstanding, and fear along the way. She did not go into detail, but it was clear that returning would not be simple. The cowboy did not push for more. He understood that some stories took time to surface. Instead, he offered what he could: knowledge of the land, safer paths, and supplies if she needed them. She looked at him for a long moment, studying his face, his calm posture, the way he did not rush to fill silence. Then she said something that stayed with him. She said that some people crossed paths only once, but their choices echoed far beyond that moment. As the day cooled, the cowboy noticed signs he did not like. Tracks near the edge of his land that were not there before. Fresh, careless. He did not mention it right away, but his alertness sharpened. The woman noticed too. She had been watching the land just as closely. They spoke quietly about it as the sun dipped low. She confirmed what he suspected. Others might be searching nearby. She did not sound afraid, but she was ready. She had lived her life prepared for movement, for change. The cowboy felt a pull inside him, a desire to protect, but also a respect for her strength. He knew he could not decide her path for her. Still, he offered to guide her part of the way when she was ready. Not as a hero, not as a leader, but as someone who knew the land. She considered his offer carefully. Trust was not given easily. Finally, she agreed. Not because she needed him, but because she believed the horse had chosen him for a reason. That night they prepared quietly, packing food, water, and basic supplies. The horse watched calmly, as if aware of the plan. The stars came out one by one, bright and steady. Before sleep, they sat near the fire once more. The woman shared a small story from her childhood about learning to walk long distances without complaint. The cowboy smiled, sharing a memory of falling off his horse as a boy and getting right back up. They laughed softly, the sound rare and real. When sleep finally came, it felt earned. The next morning would bring movement, choice, and risk, but for now there was peace. And in that quiet moment before dawn, all three understood that this journey was no longer about being lost. It was about where trust could lead. The first light of morning stretched across the land, turning the sky a soft gold. The cowboy was awake before the sun fully rose, as was the woman. The air carried a quiet tension, a feeling that today would mark the beginning of something new. The horse stood nearby, calm and alert, waiting for the movement that would come. They prepared carefully. The woman packed what she could carry without slowing the horse. She tied her few belongings tightly, making sure nothing would fall during the journey. The cowboy checked the horse, making sure its shoes were secure, its coat brushed, and its strength ready for the miles ahead. Every small preparation mattered. The desert would not forgive mistakes. Before they left, the woman paused to study the land. Her eyes moved across the hills, valleys, and trails. She breathed deeply, filling her lungs with the morning air. Then she looked at the cowboy. "I trust your knowledge of this land," she said quietly. "I will follow your guidance, but we move together." The cowboy nodded. He could see the strength in her posture, the determination in her eyes. She was not fragile. She was someone who had survived hardship, who had learned to move through the world without relying on anyone else. He respected that. He also understood that guiding her safely was more than just finding the correct path. It was a test of patience, judgment, and quiet observation. They mounted and moved slowly at first. The horse set the pace, its steps careful and steady. The early morning air was cool against their faces, carrying the scent of sagebrush and earth. The cowboy pointed out small markers, where the land rose, where water could be found, and where rocks might hide danger. The woman listened closely, absorbing every detail. As they traveled, the terrain became more difficult. Rocks jutted out along dry riverbeds, the ground shifted from soft sand to hard clay, and small ravines cut across their path. The cowboy guided the horse carefully, using subtle shifts of weight and gentle commands. The woman followed, her hands steady, her body moving as one with the animal. The horse responded to both of them, trusting that together they knew the safest way. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, warming the land. The cowboy offered water several times. The woman accepted, drinking slowly, careful not to waste a single drop. She had been without proper water for days before finding the horse. Now she valued every sip. During a pause under a large mesquite tree, the woman shared more of her story. She spoke about her people, about living in harmony with the land, about how children were taught to respect animals and nature. She did not dwell on the hardships but rather focused on the lessons. The cowboy listened, fascinated. Though he had grown up on the land, he realized there were ways of understanding it he had never known. The cowboy then spoke about his life on the ranch, about the seasons, the cattle, and the long days that built endurance. He shared how he had learned to read storms, winds, and animal behavior. They exchanged stories quietly, forming a bond without needing to declare it outright. It was a connection built on shared understanding of the land, of animals, and of survival. As the afternoon sun grew hotter, they approached an area with fewer trees and more open ground. The woman scanned the horizon. "We need to stay alert," she said. "People may be nearby." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. The cowboy understood immediately. They had been alone so far, but now the possibility of others made the journey more dangerous. The cowboy guided them along narrow trails that wound through rocks and small hills. He explained which paths were safer and which should be avoided. The woman moved with care, her attention divided between the horse and the land. The horse, sensing her alertness, remained steady, stepping carefully and responding to the smallest of cues. By late afternoon, the land began to change. Dry riverbeds gave way to sandy stretches, and the wind carried the scent of distant plants and water. They rested under a lone oak tree, sharing what little food they had brought. The woman unpacked a small piece of dried meat and some bread. They ate quietly, not rushing. While they rested, the cowboy noticed subtle signs, distant hoof tracks, broken twigs, and footprints in the sand. They were not alone, even if no one was visible yet. He pointed these out to the woman, explaining how to recognize signs of recent travelers. She listened carefully, appreciating the knowledge. She knew it could save them from danger. As the sun began to lower, they moved again. The woman adjusted her position, guiding the horse without controlling it forcefully. They moved in rhythm, trusting the horse to carry them safely. The cowboy remained close, offering advice when necessary, but letting the horse and the woman work together. At one point, a sudden noise startled the horse. A distant coyote yelp carried across the desert. The animal jumped slightly but quickly regained composure. The woman gently whispered to it and it calmed. The cowboy watched in quiet admiration. She had a way with animals, a patience that could not be taught in books or learned quickly. As evening approached, the light softened, painting the landscape in golden tones. They found a small clearing near a gentle rise where they could rest for the night. The cowboy set up a small camp, preparing water and food for both them and the horse. The woman tended to the horse, brushing its coat and checking its hooves. She spoke softly, reassuring it after a long day of travel. They sat together quietly as the sun dipped below the horizon. The woman looked at the cowboy, her expression thoughtful. "You are different from others," she said. "You respect the land and the horse. That is why it trusted you to bring me here." The cowboy nodded, not needing more words. He understood what she meant. Trust was earned through patience and understanding, not force. The horse had chosen both of them for a reason. As night fell, the stars appeared bright and countless, scattered across the sky. They sat in silence for a long time, listening to the desert. The wind carried distant sounds, but none threatened them. The cowboy felt a quiet pride and relief. They had made it this far, and the horse remained strong. Before sleep, the woman spoke again, this time more personal. She shared a memory of her childhood, learning to travel long distances and survive with only the land and animals to rely on. The cowboy shared a story of his youth, about learning the importance of patience and observation on the ranch. They laughed softly at small memories, the sound rare and comforting. The night was long but safe. The cowboy watched the fire burn low while the woman slept near the horse. He thought about the journey ahead. He knew challenges would come, but he also knew they were ready. Together, they had already learned to trust each other, and that trust would carry them through the next day. In the quiet of the desert night, he realized that guiding her was no longer just about helping someone. It had become a journey of understanding, respect, and partnership. And in that moment, beneath the wide, starry sky, he knew that the choices made today would echo far beyond this single trip. The night slowly gave way to morning. The stars faded one by one, and a soft gray light touched the land. The desert felt calm, almost gentle, as if it knew the journey was nearing its end. The cowboy woke early, as he always did. He checked the fire, now only warm embers, and stood quietly for a moment, listening. The woman was already awake, sitting near the horse, her hand resting on its neck. The horse stood still, breathing slowly, calm and ready. They shared a simple meal, careful not to waste anything. Water was checked again, supplies adjusted. There was no rush, but there was purpose. The cowboy knew the land ahead well. He also knew that once they reached a certain point, she would no longer need his guidance. As they began moving, the land slowly changed. The ground became firmer, the air carried different scents, and distant hills rose in familiar shapes. The woman noticed it too. She sat straighter, her eyes more focused. This was land closer to her people, land that spoke to her in ways the cowboy could not fully understand. They traveled quietly for hours. There was no need for much talk now. Everything important had already been said. The horse moved with steady confidence, its steps sure, as if it recognized the direction. The cowboy guided gently, knowing when to let go and when to adjust. As the sun climbed higher, they reached a ridge. From there, the land opened wide. In the distance, faint signs of life could be seen. Trails, small movements, a sense of presence that told the woman she was close. She stopped the horse and looked out, her face calm but filled with emotion. "This is far enough," she said quietly. The cowboy nodded. He had expected this moment, yet it still felt heavier than he thought it would. He dismounted and stood beside the horse. The woman slid down carefully, her feet touching the ground she knew so well. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. They stood facing each other for a long moment. The desert wind moved gently around them. There were no crowds, no noise, no big farewell. Just two people who had shared something rare. She thanked him again, not just for guiding her, but for trusting her. She said that trust was a gift, one not easily forgotten. The cowboy replied simply, saying the land had guided them both, and the horse had done most of the work. She smiled at that, a small, genuine smile. Then she turned to the horse. She rested her forehead against its neck, closing her eyes briefly. She whispered something the cowboy could not hear. When she stepped back, the horse turned toward the cowboy without hesitation, returning to his side as if it had always known where it belonged. The woman looked at the horse one last time, then at the cowboy. "You will be remembered," she said, "not by name but by action." With that, she turned and walked away, her steps steady, confident, blending into the land as if she had always been part of it. The cowboy watched until she became just a small shape against the horizon, then disappeared completely. For a long time he stood there, saying nothing. The horse nudged him gently, as if reminding him it was time to move on. The ride back felt different. The land looked the same, but the cowboy felt changed. He noticed details he might have overlooked before. The way the wind shifted, how birds moved, how the ground told quiet stories. He felt more connected, not just to the land, but to something deeper. When he finally reached his cabin, the sun was beginning to lower. He led the horse back into the corral, brushing it carefully, checking its strength. The horse was tired but strong, its eyes calm. The cowboy felt a deep sense of gratitude. That night, he sat outside longer than usual, watching the sky turn dark. He thought about how close he had come to believing the horse was lost forever, how that loss had brought something unexpected into his life. He realized that some things leave only to return with meaning. Days passed. Life slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. The cowboy worked the land, cared for the animals, repaired fences, and followed the quiet routines he knew so well. But something had changed inside him. He listened more. He watched more. He moved with greater care. Sometimes, when the wind was just right, he thought he could feel a presence, not watching but acknowledging. He did not question it. The land had its ways. One morning, while riding out early, he noticed fresh tracks near the edge of his land. They were careful, respectful. Not careless, not rushed. He smiled slightly and continued on his way. The story of the lost horse spread quietly among neighbors. Some spoke of luck, others spoke of coincidence. The cowboy did not correct them. He knew better. He knew that not everything needed explanation. Years later, when asked about the horse and that strange dawn, the cowboy would only say this: "Sometimes what we think is lost is just finding its way back, carrying something important with it." And then he would fall silent, looking out across the wide land, listening to the wind, knowing that some stories live on not through words, but through the choices people make when no one is watching. The horse stood beside him, steady and loyal, a reminder that trust, once given, could change more than just a single moment. It could change a life.